I think particularly with penetrations towards the end of the project, when you're really sort of fine-tuning services and service layouts are getting changed, one of our key roles that we have in the business now is auditors. Fireproof, the Passive Fire podcast, where we delve into the world of passive fire protection. Join the ProFinish team as we dig into the issues we see on site and in our industry every day, and find out how you can save time, money, and headaches on major construction projects. All right, g'day guys. It's been a while since we've done this shoulder to shoulder.
100%, mate. It's good to be back.
Today
back in Victoria.
Yeah, that's that you're a Sydney sider.
Yeah, I know. I've
Graced us
settled in
with your presence down here. Look, normally we're talking about products, our solutions for customers. Today we're going to take a little bit of a different slant, and we're going to have Nathan, who's part of our marketing team, ask you and I some questions. Some of the most common questions we get from customers.
Yeah.
So thanks for joining us, Nathan.
Thanks for having me on.
Good to put a face behind the marketing team, mate.
Nice. All right. Well, first question that I've got here for you guys is, it's pretty open-ended. What is the best product for my project?
What is the best product for my project? Okay. We normally get asked this by clients when they're just starting a job, and it's normally a difference between vermiculite, board, or intumescent. So they're normally your main three options that people are sort of coming to us with. And so I'll just rattle off quickly. Vermiculite is your cheapest and it's your quickest to install, but it's messy and it's ugly and it's brittle, and there's a reason it's so cheap. Then you move to board. Board is it's probably the slowest to install, but it is a nice finish. You can tidy it up, you can paint it, you can make it look really good. And intumescent would be the most expensive. And intumescent is something that is, because it is so expensive, it's normally only for like when you're looking for like a steel finish, kind of industrial sort of look, maybe like an entrance way into an office or something like that. And so there's some limitations with each. Vermiculite you can't fix to, so you wouldn't use it in anywhere. It's quite brittle. And you also wouldn't use it anywhere external. If you use it external, you have to add cement, which still is ugly. So you wouldn't really use it for that. And then board, the limitation with board is when you've got like intricate connection details or anything like that, like it's just so timely to cut out bulkheads and boxing out the certain sections, and it can actually really affect the aesthetics of it. And then intumescent, like I said, like it's expensive, but it can be applied quite quickly. Normally you want to do it off-site, and it can be an external product as well. So they're probably the times in which I would use the different products.
Right. Okay. The next question is, what is the best product to use for penetrations?
Geez, this is another one that's how long's a piece of string?
Yeah, that's right.
Look, it all comes down to some key factors. What's the service that's going through the penetration? What's the substrate? And making sure that it's tested. So there's probably a handful of key suppliers that we use.
Yep.
Generally, we try to use one supplier on a project for efficiency, because a lot of times you're working with one lot of tested systems. But yeah, how would we go about what's the best?
Yeah, I think a few companies have, like, they've brought out some products that are better than others. So Firefly, for example, TBA has a really nice wrap that they use. It's quite thin. It's their go-to product, I suppose. It's probably best in market for that. But the price tag comes along with it, and so you can do the same thing with a no-name label, basically. Get a very cheap wrap and install that. And so a lot of the time it comes down to price and effectiveness. We often use TBA Firefly for wraps just because our guys prefer to use it, because it's thinner and you don't get as itchy from it. Whereas like Trafalgar's released some really, really good products recently. They've got one of those...
The Blade Runner.
The Blade Runner, yeah, I think that's what it's called. Is that the thin one?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's an amazing product that's really changed the way people do things. It's saving people thousands of dollars across the industry. But then a lot of the time it actually comes, and ProMat has a lot of good products too. Like they've been an industry leader for a long time. And there's even some different ones, like Snap Collars have like a really small collar, which means that you can fit it in a lot of situations. And so
flexible sizing too.
what's that?
Flexible sizing too.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly. So for me, it often comes down to, when a client asks that, it often comes down to what is the cheapest and most efficient thing to use for both us and them. And another thing we need to consider is like, what is everyone else using? Because that's normally what happens is you've got one, say above an apartment door, you've got like all different penetrations coming through. And if the plumber's using one product and the sparky's using another, it's not going to be tested. So you got to make sure that everything can kind of work together. And so there's a little bit of that as well. So you kind of have to, if you're going to choose a product, the best place to start is to see the scenario in which it's being installed in, and then see what else is going through the penetration, like Russ started with, and then you can kind of choose from there. But I don't necessarily think any one product is necessarily better than the others. They all have their own kind of specialties and times in which you would use each one.
Yeah, and I mean they're on the market because they're tested.
Exactly. Yeah.
Approved.
Yeah. You have to come with a tested product. So
yeah.
So it sounds like you need a bit of knowledge then to understand what is the best product at the right time, the right situation. So based on that, what's the best time to get in a passive fire specialist?
good question.
It is a good one. I think the best time to get in a passive fire specialist is when you know that you need one. Unfortunately, sometimes people don't realise that they need somebody to provide them with that design advice or to provide them with that service, that install service. So we often get calls, hey, I need to achieve this. The building surveyor has said, I've got to fire rate this steel. Can you guys get here this week because we're trying to close out this area? Not ideal for us, but the best time from our point of view is when the building or when it's in design phase, so that we can then review the whole project, look at what's been specified, look at whether it's going to be buildable, whether it's going to work, and then we can work through some of those key milestones. We can look at what are you doing for your penetrations before the project's even started. We can look at what are you doing for your structural steel when you're in the early stages. We can look at floors and wall systems as we're getting to that stage, and again looking at what's happening with the penetrations when those services are being installed. If we've already reviewed that at the start of the project, it's a lot more streamlined.
So much better. And I think that's coming back to kind of what we actually do, is that we really sit, yes, we're installers, but the main thing we are is the conduit between the builder and the builder and the sort of the certifier, like the building team. So like the builder, the surveyor, the fire engineer, the architect. We're the conduit between them and the suppliers. And so what we have is we have good relationships with just about all of the suppliers, and we understand all of their products. We can get all of their test reports. And so we can filter through what is going to be best for the project based on understanding all of the different suppliers. And so what often happens is a builder or a surveyor or a fire engineer or someone will normally just work with someone they know, which is normally like one supplier. And what often happens there, back to the point we said earlier, is that if you have multiple systems being installed on the job, all of a sudden, you might not have a tested solution. And so, or you might not be able to actually get the tested solution with that one supplier. And so you need to be able to pull on the different suppliers across what their specialties are and what they offer to be able to then install a compliant product. And so we're that conduit between the two.
So I guess the perfect time is during the design phase, and as soon as you know that you're going to need a passive fire service.
If somebody's interested in getting you guys in early in the design phase, what's the process? What are the steps when they first reach out to ProFinish?
Good question.
Yeah. We haven't worked out who's going to talk about what, have we?
I'll jump in.
So here we're talking about the customer journey.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, so I spent a lot of time in the managing the sales department and working in the sort of front end of the business, working with business development clients and stuff like that. So the basically what happens when a customer comes to us is they'll normally send us an email or make a phone call. We'll do a sort of an intro call, kind of like, this is who we are. We just want to let you know that we've received the project, we've got your documents, and we kind of set them up and let them know what the journey is. And so we'll basically tell them that in the next couple of days, I'll be reviewing the documents, and we're going to book you in for a discovery call. And so the discovery call is just all about understanding the scope of the job and the intricacies of the job. Like, is there any, because often it's not just about what they want. It's like, like Russell said, I need this done really quickly, or I don't have any money to spend. Like they've got a Ferrari in mind with the budget for a Honda, and so we need to just sort of like taper those expectations and be able to really help them through that.
And understand their key drivers as well.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's sort of the place in which we do that. And that call normally goes for about half an hour. We love to do it over Teams, and then following on from that, our team will then go away and put together a quote or a proposal, I suppose. And essentially, it's taking all of those different factors into account, like what do they actually need, what's required on the job. A lot of the time, this is where a redesign will happen, sort of either throughout that discovery call or maybe after. We'll kind of redesign the project based on what actually can be installed. And then from there, we'll go into like almost like a presentation, I suppose, or like we'll present the service options as to what we think is best for their job. And at that point, it's very collaborative. It's like, look, here's kind of like your baseline, your midline, and your best case scenario of like, sort of like the different options. And we'll normally give people a few different options. And then from there, once everything's agreed to, we'll then hand things over to we'll make an introduction and hand things over to our project management team, where, obviously it's a collaborative between us. We make sure that we've got, it's a really good handover so that clients know who they're working with at all times. And then we hand it over to the project management team and their delivery to be able to set up for a site visit if one hasn't already occurred, but definitely one prior to starting. They'll obviously get the orders in place and just agree to some timelines with the client and what's going to be delivered and when, and then we get to work on basically delivering the project.
Yep.
How often do those plans change from for the builder?
I'd have
95% of the time.
Yeah, I agree.
Hence why they need you in early.
Exactly.
Basically,
Yeah,
so they don't
that's
go
right.
too far down the path.
I mean, a lot of times it might be slight tweaks, but there just might be little detail or things that haven't been considered.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So
and often it's the danger with not engaging a professional early is because what will happen is they'll then go down the path, get a few quotes, just as per what they've asked for, and if they go through and continue down that path, and they get to the point where they're going to award it, or they've awarded it and then they're building it, and all of a sudden it can't happen, that's when variations start to come up.
Yeah.
Variations in building is a dirty word. Like you do not want to be talking about that. So, we try to avoid that as much as possible, and we really don't want to go down that path. And so we try to set the expectation up early. What that means sometimes, though, is that we can seem expensive, and so we'll often, like when I said those different options, we'll often present options for this is what you asked for, this is what you actually need. But you have to understand that if you go for what you asked for, there's going to be XYZ problems that pop up. And so we just really try to work with our customers and clients and take them through that kind of journey.
yeah. And then obviously there's closing out a project too. So, finishing off the customer journey. Our finance team will obviously be getting involved with claims, especially for ongoing projects. And there'll be new key contacts there that the customer's introduced to. And our admin team will often be the one that's finalising the project documentation and actually providing everything that you need to close out that project, certificates and warranties and test reports and everything that you're going to need.
Yeah, and just to close on that, I think it's really important the back end of the job. That it is, the whole process is so important, and the offboarding should be as important as the onboarding.
Yeah.
And the good thing is with us, we spoke about a lot of different team members there, but a lot of the time, people expect to kind of be working just with one person, and there's normally really only two people that are involved throughout the process. It's normally the passive fire consultant or the estimating sort of department, and only one person there. And then they get handed to the project manager who runs and really owns that relationship. And then at the end of the job, it gets handed back to the passive fire consultant to help them with any other projects or ongoing things that might be happening. And so one of our strengths, I know a lot of people can say you're only going to work with the director, you're only going to work with one person. Just going through that, I think that's often a weakness. I know my calendar gets pulled in a million different directions if you're always the person that's available to everyone. So we were really deliberate in making sure that we had people that could spend their time and specialise and really work with the client through those things. Because a lot of the time, if I get a phone call from a client, I've got no idea what they're talking about. I've got to go and pick it up. Whereas if they talk to the person that's been dealing with them the whole time, very responsive. They get a lot of good answers and stuff like that. So we really try to make that transparent from the start and just walk them through that journey.
I think it's something that we've gotten a lot better at too, where people typically call the people that they know.
Yeah.
And if you're involved, if you've been involved in a project, then they come back to you. So
Definitely.
it's really important to have that clear delineation that now we're handing this to our product delivery team. So yeah, we're doing that a lot better.
Absolutely. And we try to keep that too. Like if people have worked with clients in the past, we'll continue that relationship. Like we'll keep the same team on, just to make sure that it's they're working with someone they know. But yeah, it's definitely been an evolution.
Nice.
Yeah.
So when you move into the building phase, what's the role of a passive fire specialist on site, and when should they be there on site?
Yeah, good question. So it depends on the service that's being installed. So for the majority of the works we do, we start right from the start. So normally that happens when if we're being engaged for a pre-construction register, that'll actually happen right at the start, like right before build's actually even started. But for the majority of our works, it's like structural steel and anything to do with structures. So that often happens right after the concrete's been poured. So the steel's been erected, concrete's been poured, normally like a level 1, and we'll come in straight after. It's a messy job, normally for vermiculite spray, but even if it's board or intumescent, like we need to get in there as soon as possible because you very quickly lose access. And when you lose access, it takes a lot longer, so your price hikes. So you want to get us in there right from the start. Or as soon as that slab sort of goes down. Sometimes we can actually even go in before that, and so we can work through project timelines and stuff like that. Like if there's some really strict deadlines, there are some ways we can fast track that. But for the majority, it's normally as that slab goes down, we sort of come in.
So when I think about that question, I think it was sort of the role of the passive fire specialist. Like I think our team in the office, the passive fire specialist and early in the piece, and the role is design advice, the right solutions, which are ultimately going to save you time and money, and meet your requirements. Then I think about our installers; they're also passive fire specialists. Coming from the trade side of it, the role is obviously to install as per a tested system, to make sure we're meeting our ITPs, we're doing our QAs, and we've actually, hey Zusi,
we have another member on the podcast,
a furry friend joining us today. And their role is obviously making sure that we're getting compliant install, and you're getting the service that's required in the timeframe required. So I think there's two sides to that. We've got specialists in the office in the design and development side of it, project scoping, and we've got specialists in the field for installation, and also quality assurance.
Absolutely. And so with that, things pop up throughout the build. And so we've got there'll often be a lot of different situations and just things that, you couldn't have forecasted for. And so what happens is they'll put a hole somewhere they shouldn't have, or there'll be like a riser that wasn't quite right, or like it didn't actually get worked out through the design phase. And so there's all this problem solving that needs to happen on the job. And if you don't have a passive fire installer in your contact list or on site, you're going to go to the suppliers again. And the suppliers normally look at things like they're not installers, so they don't understand that portion of it. So you need to be able to sort of understand everything. And when you have a passive fire specialist on site that you can turn to, these things get solved really quickly. You can work with them and you can solve them on the go very quickly. So the project can continue to move forward because a lot of the time these things are hold points.
Yeah, that's right. I think particularly with penetrations towards the end of the project, when you're really sort of fine-tuning services and service layouts are getting changed, one of our key roles that we have in the business now is auditors. So, and I would put in that bracket as a specialist where they're accredited, so FPAS accredited, and they're going to be able to provide you with that problem solving because their knowledge of products, systems, it's just so extensive that
absolutely
they can look at a situation and really quickly determine how we might treat that.
So on suppliers side of things then, is there any lead time on these products that you might want to use that builders should be aware of?
Yes, there is. And it's very frustrating for everyone involved.
Look, it definitely varies.
Yeah, it does. Yeah. That's the frustrating part, I think.
We've had some recently, haven't we, where you've got a product that's coming from overseas, and it's coming in shipments, and it might be 6 weeks, it might be 12 weeks. And if we don't have a a purchase order or a contract locked in for that project, but we know that it's coming, it's really hard for us to make a commitment to the supplier to put that product aside or to hold product for that project. And then sometimes we get that contract come through and they want us to start in 2 weeks. And the product's not there.
That's normally where the big issues come from, is like people just assume that these things are going to be readily available, and they don't talk about lead. Like, we try to bring up when's the project starting, what's the lead times, all that kind of stuff. But it happens. Like Russ said, it can be up to 12 weeks. Sometimes it can be even longer. Like, we've been held out for times just because the projects have been so big. So sometimes you'll have like even the 12-week shipment that's coming, like that's just going to get you through half of the job. Like, you need the next one as well. So, and then there's just times where the industry's busy. So I think probably the most important thing here with customers and our clients is really just don't leave it to the last minute. Like, or if you are, there are other solutions. It's just going to cost more. We'll take you through them. And that's normally what we'll do. We'll normally provide an option for like, here's the cheapest, most cost-effective option to use, but it's a 12-week lead time. Here's option B. And we sort of go through that. But
I was going to ask, what happens if you can't physically get that product in the time that you need?
Well, I think like that comes back to what products are coming from where. So there's products that are manufactured locally. We know that in smaller quantities we can get them immediately and we can probably start tomorrow. There's other products that are being shipped from overseas, and and that's probably the space that we're playing in now, compared to 3-4 years ago. Like, the projects size that we're undertaking now are a lot bigger.
We're doing the biggest projects in Australia. Like, we're doing the biggest project in Victoria, New South Wales. Like, we're involved in these kind of things. So just the volume and quantities are a lot larger.
Yeah. So when stock supply issues might not have been an issue 3-4 years ago, now it's a core part of the project planning for us in the pre-start phase. So some of those bigger ones, it will, like board. There's certain board products that might be coming from Belgium through Promat. If we don't have that particular product, there might be an alternative for using a thinner layer and doing a double layer. So we can still achieve the required thickness by installing 2 lots of a thinner product. Or there's an alternate product which might be coming from somewhere else. It might be more expensive, but that could be an option as well. So, and
then there's potentially test solutions or like tested products where they have to meet, and so you've got you have to kind of redesign the system. So there's just a little bit in it. Basically, you can't. It's very hard to make that last minute sort of call, and we have had a lot of people recently get caught out on this exact sort of matter. Looking for that.
And you really need a passive fire specialist to have that knowledge of all of these available options, right?
You do, absolutely. Because you're not going to be able to really have that conversation with a supplier because you don't have an account with them. You can't order with them. So, and it's not just limited to board too. Like, we've had this with sprays. We've had this with intumescence. Like every company goes through this thing where there's this like surge of, being too busy or not being busy enough, and like what gets spec'd on a job. And so it just happens. Again, coming back to the important thing is get in touch with us as soon as you can.
That's right. Yeah, I think on Sydney Airport we cleared out the fire techs from Dulux stock, didn't we?
Australia-wide, and it was like we had to substitute part of the product towards the end just to get it through.
And it's not the first time it's happened. If you have a large project that needs to be done in a short amount of time, you need all that product there. We've got to source it from wherever we can.
Yeah, that was a lot of interest.